So then we're going to duplicate the top and separate it using P, and we're going to add a solidify. We're going to apply all the modifiers to both meshes and add a solidify to the top mesh. But first, we're actually going to delete the top of the ice cream scoop because we want this to be like icing on an ice cream. So just delete the vertices you want to in order to kind of get a ice cream drip over it. And we're going to add some more subsurf in order to smooth everything out. And now we add this solidify in order to make the icing kind of pop out a little. So again, rescale, and we're going to make a new material. Again, same principal shader with subsurf, and we'll make it a blue icing. So just add some final tweaks. So now we'll join the meshes together, and we'll add it back to the landscape. Following this, we'll duplicate it 2 more times and place both of them at different areas within the landscape. Then we'll add new colors, new materials, and just change the colors. Again, these are just principled shaders. So once that's complete, we will move on to creating um, these drops, gumdrops. So we will first model a simple gumdrop and then add materials. So here we're having a simple setup by adding a mixed shader node, a glossy shader, and a glass shader. Or we will add a diffuse shader instead of glossy. And we'll use a Fresnel node as the factor. So again, we'll duplicate this some more times, and we will start making each individual one have different colors. And I'll duplicate another one and make a green. So once this is done, we're going to do the same thing as we did with the trees. We're going to take them all and group them together, again with Control G. So that looks pretty good. So let's group them together with Control G, and then I'll make a new group called jellies. And we'll rotate them, again, 90 degrees. So create a new particle, again, set it to hair, and we'll set our group to jellies, and rotate them now. Rotate them over 90 degrees. That's good. And we'll set the scale and change the scale to shrink it. That looks good. And we'll increase the size, and again, make sure that the particle sim is above the decimate modifier. And let's add a random size and increase the number of particles that are in the So now we're going to start by making cakes. So we're just going to add, again, basic cubes and subsurf, and then we'll use a principled shader to make a velvety brown cake. So we apply the subsurf, and now we will start by duplicating the cake, and now we're going to make icing in a similar fashion to how we made the ice cream. So again, just deleting vertices to make an icing layer. And we'll repeat this for all 3 layers of the cakes. So we'll add a subsurf back in and a solidify modifier in order to add some thickness to the icing. And then when we're done, we will apply them, and we'll add a new material to the icing. And then we'll duplicate this cake 2 more times after adjusting its position and scale. We'll duplicate it 2 more times, and we'll set these 2 cakes in the background and scale them up so they take up a large part of the background, so they're a nice background object for the viewer to look at. And we will add new materials to those cakes after reformatting the angle of the camera. So I've noticed that the head of the Marshmallow Man was not facing the camera in its new position, so I re-keyframed those parts of the head in order to now look at the camera. So again, just scrubbing through the animation and adding new keyframes. That looks pretty good. So let's take a quick render, and let's add some new materials to the road. And this will be, again, a basic diffuse shader, but we're going to color it a different light beige. We'll make the linings of the sidewalk a different color than the actual road. So we'll make a lighter beige for the actual road, and the linings will be a darker, almost burnt beige. Now we will add new icing to the cake to give them more variation. And that looks pretty nice. So let's change, I'll do some final modifications to the lighting. And we'll have a backlight, or not a backlight, more like a ground light, which will be a lightish blue. And again, you want to set the strength to be more like 0.1, something very low. Now we will set, in the world settings, we're going to add in a sky texture in order to create a background. And now we will use RGB curves in order to brighten that sky texture and turn the bluish green sky texture into more of a pinkish and pink white, more almost like a rosy white color. I think that's a little too pink, so let's tone down the pink. It's also a little too bright, so we'll try and fix that. Again, with a bright contrast node and a hue saturation node, and we will try and decrease the saturation in order to make the scene less pink and more of a white color, because we want it to be a slight effect. We're going to tweak the tree settings again by adjusting the vertex groups. And again, you can refresh how your particle sims look by simply moving the particle sim modifiers up and down. That refreshes each time. Make sure to refresh the particle sim, otherwise you may not be getting the result you'll actually receive in the final render. So just make sure to refresh. Again, that's just moving the particle sim up and down below the decimate modifier and above the decimate modifier. We'll make some tweaks here and there in order to adjust the positions of objects in the scene to make them more visible, and again, getting rid of some trees where we don't want them, and adding some trees where we do want them. The idea is to show the objects in the scene without obscuring them with trees, but we also want the scene to appear to be filled, so we'll add some trees to add volume. So it's kind of tinkering around with the settings and the vertex groups until we find a result that we find desirable. So again, small tweaks. I'm going to fiddle around with the settings for the particle sim just a little. And now we're going to start making some clouds. So again, basic edit mode modeling by taking a cube and a subsurf modifier and just going through the same thing over again. We're going to add a decimate modifier again to add a low poly effect, and we're going to add a displacement modifier again with the same cloud texture or noise texture in order to add some distortion within the actual mesh. And then we're going to duplicate the cloud, and we're going to again tweak it a little bit, add some variation with vertex modeling in edit mode, just to add some variation in clouds. And we're going to do this another time for a total of 3 clouds, and just add some more variation, change around some vertexes and edges, switch up the scale a little, and add some more distortion. So again, switch up the scale, and let's start applying those modifiers, and then we'll add some decimate modifiers in order to achieve that low poly look that we would like. Again, we'll change the low poly decimate to maybe 0.1, and then we'll add some new materials for clouds. And again, we'll use the same Fresnel setup, except instead of a glossy and diffuse, we're going to go with 2 diffuses and make one light blue and the other a white. And that'll make that'll be a nice look because it will reflect the ground plane and basically achieve the effect of having a lighting from below. And now we will scale the clouds and place them into view, and we will basically move them into view. Again, we're going to select the camera this time, and using our cursor, we can scale up the clouds. I'm going to tweak the settings for some of the materials just to make them look a little better. And then I will adjust the layering. That looks good so far. And I'll scrub through the animation. Again, you can view this through material shading just to have an idea of how everything looks. Make sure everything is how you want it to be. Tweak some settings, the scale of things, kind of play around with everything. I'm going to give it a quick render just to see kind of the top layer. I'll also tweak some materials. So again, small tweaks make a very large difference in the final render. I'm going to tweak the colors for the Marshmallow Man, and again, I'll give another render. And that should be it for this tutorial. So that's it for now. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next one.